Hello everybody, Jaxxsin here, and today I'm coming to you with a review of Hollow Knight by Cherry Games. This is a Metroidvania 2D side-scroller back and forther, unlock, upgrades as you go, fucking awesome goodness, okay? Now, I find personally, I really love these games, so if you love these type of games, you're going to enjoy this game above all others, and let me explain why. Because with these games, it's often hit and miss for me, more often hit than miss, but there are examples of games that I feel are kind of like, they're fun and they're good, but because I enjoy the genre so much, and if I kind of like pull myself away, a game like Headlander, for example, it's not comparable to a game like Hollow Knight. It's not comparable to a game like Axiom Verge. It's not comparable to, in my personal opinion. And what sets those apart, and especially in this instance with this game, especially even more so than Axiom Verge, though Axiom Verge has amazing story in it as well, with notes that are hidden that add to the exploration and uncovering the story as you uncover that sort of shit. I fucking love that shit. I go fucking crazy for that shit. Unlocking the story through exploration and playing the game. That sort of thing, I love that, and I think that's a key thing in the Souls series. And in the way this Hollow Knight more mirrors the Souls series and less mirrors Axiom Verge is because the Souls series is you could play through Dark Souls 1 and step away with no idea what the fuck it is you had just done. Like, period. You could just say, I just fought a bunch of hard bosses and I found the last boss in the kiln, and then I killed him and that was it, you know what I mean? And you could just not know any story. Me personally, for example, I don't know much about the lore in Dark Souls 2. I know little bits and pieces that connect it to the other worlds, kinda, but I don't know the intricacies of that world as someone who has played it, beat it, and, actually looked for the story in that process. When I played through Dark Souls 2, I just was so angry and frustrated at that stupid game that I played it really just through, I wanted to kill a bunch of bosses and kill the last boss, and I didn't understand what any of that fucking meant, but the story is there, but you have to look for it and explore to find it, right? That's one of the great things about, and a lot of Souls-like games that try to copy the Souls formula, games that try to copy the Metroidvania genre, they miss that completely. They miss this sense of discovering not only just, the map layout and how it works and these little hidden secrets that you couldn't get to before because you lacked an upgrade that you now currently have. They forget about that, and it just becomes, the story is kind of fed in, as you go along. Now, is that necessarily always a bad thing? No, because Exile's End, I would argue, but Exile's End also has those, so I can't even put it in this list. Okay, let's say I gotta go with like a game like Headlander. That's the best example I can think of right now, where it's kind of just given to you, you know what I mean? And there might be some secrets hidden in that. I personally didn't care to replay it again. It was good and I enjoyed it for what it was, and it satisfied my itch for that day. But on the whole though, it didn't stand out like Assault and Sanctuary. Like a Hollow Knight. Now, Hollow Knight even is separate from Salt and Sanctuary, because Hollow Knight steps up its difficulty in a big bad way. Honestly, completing some of these challenges, especially the Colosseum of Fools, which is one of my critiques with this game, I did not mind the challenge in this game because I felt like the challenge was fair. I felt like the challenge put enough tools in me, the player's hands, that if I, reacted correctly and used the correct ability at the correct time, that I could surpass any of these difficult challenges in the game. If I became better, if I got good, son, I could get past this and I can see the next, boss. I can see the ending of this game. I just gotta, just tweak my playstyle to better fit the game, you know what I mean, and get faster reflexes wise and things like that. But the problem with the Colosseum of Fools is that it wasn't working right, okay? And when I say that, I mean I'm talking about there would be transitions where it would phase into the next phase without giving me enough time to kill the monster, when normally it usually always waited until I had finished that wave of enemies to begin the next wave. That was a problem. I had a problem with the wizards. Their orb would stay in the Colosseum of Fools, and it would just be there in your way, and you would jump and try to avoid it, and it just made beating the thing impossible once they were floating in the air there. Eventually I just see them and I'm like, okay, I'm going to die, so I better just die and respawn, and hopefully it doesn't bug out next time. So That was my only critique with the game though, but the challenge felt fair to me. Every difficult boss, I felt like, okay, well, let me go away, step away for a minute, and I'll come back and I'll beat this boss here in a minute. You know what I mean? And I was able to, because I'd step away, do some exploration, find some more things. Like I said, I got a little bit over 40 hours in this game, so I did a very good job of going back and forth, exploring 91% at the end. Now, what this game does right with the story, back to my original point, now that I've trailed out into one of my critiques. I go all over the place in these things, guys. You never know where it's fucking headed. Anyway, back to my point about the story. The way it's delivered is, it's very close to Souls, very close to the Salt and Sanctuary, less like Axiom Verge. In this case, there's like NPCs that offer up bits of story, and you can actually follow these NPCs from their point A to point B to point C to point D, you know, depending on what boss and how far you've pushed and explored the game world, you know, and it's possible to miss them. And this adds, you know, like I said, like with Dark Souls, you can play those games over and over again, and if you just don't know, you're gonna find something new for several playthroughs. If you played Dark Souls through blind 100%, never looked up anything, you would be replaying those games over and over again and constantly finding new things. Okay, and Hollow Knight does that extremely well in that aspect of it. I'd say what Hollow Knight does the best though is its visuals. Okay, this is weird. It reminds me of, for some reason, I was trying to justify it to my brother, and I couldn't even come up with a reason why it reminded me of it. But it reminds me of The Black Cauldron. It's an old Disney movie. If you get a chance, go look up a clip of it. For some reason, when I first started playing this and I was seeing these images of your player character going through this world and exploring and continuing, you know, to advance and draw the map, it felt like that to me. And let's move on to that, onto the exploration, the gameplay. Let's move on to that. Like I've already touched on the combat. The combat is fluid, smooth. The controls go exactly where you tell them to. You never feel like your character did something that you didn't want it to do. And that's why the difficulty, like I said, is fair in my opinion. The exploration is really fun. One problem I had with the exploration, I just want to touch off real quick, because those were really, the Coliseum of Fools bugging out and this were really my only complaints I have with this game. But I wish that later in the game, that when you've discovered all the fast travel points, the scarab guy who, you know, moves you from point A to point B, I kind of wish those were set up in a little bit better way to get around the map a little faster. Certain areas even change as you advance the story of the game, and if you advance it too far, some shortcuts are cut off, and I found those areas kind of a pain to be going through later on in the game once I've already kind of cleared everything and done everything, and I didn't want to go through those areas again, but I needed to access this area, and so I needed to go, you know, in a crazy fashion. But other than that, the exploration panned out very nice. I didn't feel, so like in Axiom Verge, some people could say this was a flaw in it. I don't think it was. Axiom Verge to me did exploration perfectly. But Axiom Verge, one could make the claim that it kind of offered too many choices at once. I mean, I'd say that with Dark Souls 1 as well. I mean, that's a good thing to me because I like the exploration. But, you know, on the flip side of that, Headlander kind of gives you a more like direct route experience with, you know, some big areas opening up, but they open up a little bit more slowly than a game like Dark Souls, for instance, where you go fucking all over the fucking place. From like the start, you could end up in an area that you're going to get killed in no matter what. You know what I mean? As a new player. And so, I feel like this was more akin to Axiom Verge, but also in a way more simplified. It wasn't as complex as an Axiom Verge in the map layout and the drip and rate at which you get items and kind of showing you where you could go now. I felt like it was a little bit less complicated than Axiom Verge in the beginning, but in the end, a little bit more complicated finding those last little hidden secret areas, as you know, except for in the case of like the hidden worlds in Axiom Verge, which could be anywhere randomly, you know what I mean? That fucking game is great. I keep using it as a comparison because I think so it and Salt and Sanctuary and this are probably my favorite like new games in this like style. And this one quickly went up there at the top of the list when I started to uncover more story bits. And I went online and I started to look up like what's the endings like. I knew there were going to be multiple endings because the clues in the game were pushing to that end, like you could do this or you could do this, you know what I mean? And I kind of wanted to know what those things were I could do and how to do them, just so I could pick the ending that I wanted. And I know like some people say, "Oh, what a bitch," you know, you looked shit up while you were playing. I did. I don't care, you know. I don't mind spoiling myself if I've gone to a certain point in the game where I know the ending's near and I kind of want to see, okay, what ending do I want? And as I did that and I started to read the story and already kind of like been drawn into it by these NPCs and that, you know, their concurrent stories that keep showing up and you're talking to them, and like it's just they did a really good job of developing this world that was like Secret of Nim like, but with bugs. And I don't think humans entered the picture. I could be wrong about that, but I felt like this is like a universe that is like bugs. They're just bugs, you know, universe of bugs. I don't know if it's like Bugs Life, like or was it Ants where they were in Central Park? Who the fuck knows? I don't really care. Anyway, one of those fucking bug movies that were everywhere back then. Anyway, as the story unfolded, it drew me in the way an Axiom Verge did. It drew me in the way Assault and Sanctuary did. And it had just as many things to, you know, like the coolest was when you get the dream nail and you can actually use it on the enemies and you can see the enemy's thoughts, and you can use it on bosses and see the boss. It's very cool to be able to use this nail, and you find items on bodies in Dark Souls. Well, in this game they've given you the ability, like you could see what that body was thinking in its last seconds of life, and it was very cool. Like it added a whole layer, like you would be going back where you had already found items just because you were curious, like not because you knew that, like you knew there's nothing there, but you're curious, like what was that bug's thought in relation to this item as you read the item description. You know, the bestiary was extensive, a lot of good things going on with the bestiary, where you could go through and read about whatever, you know, fucking bugs you had just mastered killing, and that gives you the, you know, the incentive, even if you don't need the geo, which is the currency in the game, to buy charms, things of that nature, notches, you know, basically anything in the game that helps your character, you can buy some aspect of it. And as you do this, it's cool. It's very cool how the story lays out. It's very cool the amount of detail they went into it. It gives you a reason to kill these enemies. It gives you... I really enjoyed this game. I told myself I was going to make this short one, and I've gone on for days now. So those are my thoughts on Hollow Knight. In my opinion, definitely worth the asking price. Instant classic in my opinion of these genres, that genre of those kind of games that I'm going to remember. Like a Headlander at some point I'm just not going to think of unless I'm thinking of an example of like one that was good but not bad, you know what I mean? And there's a lot like that I've played that I don't even remember, that were just good, but they just didn't have it. They didn't have it. They didn't have what Assault and Sanctuary had. They didn't have what an Axiom Verge had. They didn't have what a Hollow Knight had. And Hollow Knight had it in spades. And that's it for me, everybody. I love you. Till next time, keep kicking ass, be safe, stay awesome, give this a try. Let me know down below what you thought of this review, if it was helpful, if it swerved you into giving a shit. Talk to y'all later. Take care.